So I want to finish today's show off by talking about Brandin Cooks. Apparently, he had a really good practice here. Him and Dak were connecting, and that's going to be big. Brandin Cooks being a legitimate number 2 receiver for this Cowboys offense this upcoming season is going to be what really pushes the Cowboys into reaching their ceiling as an offense. I think that you started to see Brandin Cooks and Dak connect last season in the second half of the season. I mean, Brandin Cooks had 6 touchdowns in the second half of the season last year. So he was productive from that standpoint, but you do want to see more of the Brandin Cooks things that he does on display more this upcoming season, where you're talking about him taking advantage of the deep part of the field, him being a legitimate deep threat. I do think that there were some plays left on the table between him and Dak Prescott. I think that connection is going to be better this upcoming season. I think he's going to be more comfortable in this offense. I think Brandin Cooks will have a better season this upcoming season than he did last season. And I thought he had a fine season last year, but I do think you're going to see more production from Brandin Cooks this upcoming season. I'm not saying this guy is going to be, a legit superstar receiver this upcoming season, but can I expect 800 yards from Brandin Cooks? I think I can do that. And when you match that with a Jake Ferguson, who I expect to get over 800 yards, along with CeeDee Lamb, who I expect 1,500 plus from, I think that you have a nice trio there of receivers, along with whatever other receiver steps up and wants to be that 4th, 5th, 6th option for this football team this upcoming season. So, my thing with Brandin Cooks was I felt like last year they were asking him to do things that Brandin Cooks really doesn't do. They asked him to kind of be like the Michael Gallup type receiver, but that's not what he is, right? And when we talk about some of the best offenses in football, you look at Miami with Hill and Waddle, you look at Cincinnati with Chase and Higgins, and I just feel like, Philadelphia with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I feel like if you're going to be an explosive offense that puts up a lot of points, you need your wide receiver 2 to be your second option. That's just what I feel. And the Cowboys were number 1 in points per game last year, so maybe I'm wrong when I say this. But at the same time, I feel like if the Cowboys want that offensive success to transfer over into the postseason, Brandin Cooks is going to be very vital in that, because when you look at Brandin Cooks and his skill set, like I talked about earlier, his ability to take advantage of the deep part of the field, that's going to open things up in the middle of the field for guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. If you have a legitimate threat on the deep part of the field, now you put teams in a bind to where you say, hey, we'll just throw the ball down the field to Brandin Cooks. If you want to put more guys in the middle of the field and emphasize the middle of the field more with your coverage, we'll just throw the ball downfield to Brandin Cooks and pick up a big gain. What do you want? Do you want death by 1,000 paper cuts, or do you just want, a big play to happen? Because we will throw the ball to Brandin Cooks. And another part of this is, hey, Tolbert, Brooks, Cropper, one of you guys needs to step up and be a legitimate wide receiver 3 here. So I'm not saying it's unrealistic to think that they can have a plethora of receivers that step up for them and make plays for them. I actually think that that's going to be the case. I believe in John Stevens as well. I think they're going to be better throwing the ball out of 12 personnel this upcoming season. I believe they were in the middle of the pack with throwing out of 12 personnel. Okay, I was just making sure because I have my ESPN alerts on. I don't have my text message alerts on or anything, but I have my ESPN alerts on just in case, one of these deals happens and I got to, break down in the middle of the show talking about that. But that's besides the point. One of these guys needs to step up outside of Cooks, Ferguson, and Lamb. And to be honest with you, Brandin Cooks needs to step up as well. And he needs to be better than what he was last season, even though I was fine with what Brandin Cooks gave you because of the touchdowns and how reliable he was for Dak in the red zone. And the fact that he did have 3 plays this past season in the fourth quarter that gave you a lead late in the fourth quarter. Now, you were 2-1 in those games. You won the Chargers game. You won the Lions game. You lost the Miami game. That's not Brandin Cooks' fault. When you threw the ball to him on that corner route, guess what? He made the play. And the offense scored. And the defense didn't do their job there. So, that's kind of my thing with just how this offense is going to look in its totality. If they want this offense to reach its ceiling, it cannot just be CD and Jake Ferguson. Brandin Cooks needs to step up along with another receiver or two, because I feel like John Stevens is going to be a baller this year. I expect from John Stevens maybe like a 300 to 400 yard season, but maybe 5 to 7 touchdowns around that range. Maybe he's a red zone target for Dak. So I think they have a lot of interesting possibilities here in this receiver room. But to me, it's all for nothing if you don't get the type of production from Brandin Cooks that you were expecting when you acquired him.